Hey everyone, Ian here before we get started. Back in December, we had Rainey from Rainey Plays Games on for an interview, and shortly after, I went over to chat with him for an episode of Perspective Checks on his show. We didn't know when it was going to release when we were recording this episode, but as of release, that episode of Perspective Checks is now live. If you want to hear me talk to Rainey about homebrew, game design, and other things of that nature, please go check it out. I've left a link in the show notes. And now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Under Common Taste. This is a podcast where we create and discuss homebrew content for tabletop RPGs.
Relax. Enjoy the game. Have fun.
I'm Ian Woodworth. I'm joined by my co-host James Daly, and today we're going to be talking about something a little different. James, if you want to go ahead and introduce it, because this was your topic suggestion.
Yeah, this is kind of my weird brainworm child. And I've seen a couple things that have discussed this. And what it comes down to is, as much as we love being able to gather at the table with our friends and, while away an entire Saturday or Sunday afternoon, or whatever time we have, we don't always have a schedule where everyone can get together. We can't always block off 2, 3, 4 hours of time because life is life. And especially as, we get older, if you're moving from like high school to like college level and you've got things going, or a young adult to full adulthood, life is pressing, but games are still important. And so with that, we have to examine and look at ways we can still engage with the game, with our friends, our coworkers, however, our roommates, without that like huge chunk of dedicated time. If you look at video gaming, you see this in the quote, hardcore versus a casual gamer. And that's kind of what we want to look at today, is more of a casual or a passive way of playing a tabletop game, where you can do it in chunks. You can do, if you have 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 seconds, you go, you make your move, you make your play, and then you just leave it open via correspondence or however for your other players to make their moves and make their plays. And you gather as you have time. And it's not this ever-present chunk of gaming where you're there and that's your main focus.
Right, yeah. And whenever we were talking about it in planning for this episode, my mind immediately went to play-by-post. We've talked about play-by-post before. Play-by-post used to be a fairly popular thing. I don't want to say that it's died off in popularity, because there has definitely been a resurgence in the last few years, especially, during the pandemic and, coming out of the pandemic, has been a resurgence in play-by-post and that sort of demand for connecting with other people from a distance. And play-by-post is one of those structures that can do very well for that, where you have a block of time where you are expected to read whatever the current prompt is and respond with your input.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the players to actually respond in that time window. And once all the responses come in, the DM will, take those responses and play out what happens on the DM side and then send out a new prompt for the next batch of responses. And that is definitely a way to do it. It has its benefits. It has its limitations. We tried doing a play-by-post game once. You tried running a game for us over Messenger. Yeah. And I think that was before any of us, the players, really understood how play-by-post was supposed to work. And so it didn't really work very well. It got kind of muddled and then it just sort of petered out.
Yeah, and with that too, some of the technology we were trying to deal with, Messenger for a little while had a dice roller that you could pull up as an app, and then that wound up faltering and going away. And this was right towards the beginning of Roll20, or just before Roll20, or before at least I was aware of Roll20. So this was fairly early on. I want to say this was 2015, 2016, I think. And I did a lot of learning during that. The play-by-posts, especially as Ian's described, is definitely more like the old MUD games, which were a precursor to the MMOs in MMORPGs from the early internet days where everything was still all text dialogue. And it can work. The things I would do different, and again, D&D in itself would be a challenge to run a game like this. It's possible. The biggest thing is making sure everyone understands their turn order, because if people start talking on top of each other, it becomes more difficult. And so something like a layered forum or a bulletin board even would probably be a better forum for that than Messenger was.
Yeah, definitely a forum or even like group email, like reply all emails. I think you're right. I think Messenger is instant, and it encourages people to go above and beyond what they are technically allowed to do in a given turn. It encourages people to expand their actions, and it muddles the whole operation, especially in a game like D&D where turns are important.
Yeah. And with that too in Messenger, because again, we were a group of friends playing, that cross-table banter that you would get at most physical tables muddled up the actual in-game conversations as well. And so things would get lost. That said, something like Roll20 with a virtual tabletop, I think if you blended that forum or that messenger board type deal with a virtual tabletop, could be a way that you could do a game through correspondence. So much like people used to mail each other and play chess or checkers through the mail, you could do the same thing. And again, keep your turn orders, but everybody, hey, I'm going to do this. I search for that. I roll for this. And the DM would have to be more present because they're going to have to answer more questions and responses. But I think leaving that tabletop kind of open for the players to explore one move at a time would also be very feasible.
Yeah, that would work. And I think that if you're going to be doing a game over something like Messenger, having 2 group chats open with everybody in it, one for game actions and one for table talk, would also be a good compromise for that.
Absolutely.
But I just think that D&D in its current iteration just feels too crunchy to really do play by post well. I feel like you need something with a simpler rule set, a more abstract rule set.
Very much, yes. And that kind of got me thinking too, because the game I saw is actually available on DriveThruRPG. It's Apollo 47. And the premise of the game is one person is ground control and the other person is part of quote, quote, Apollo 47, either on the moon or orbiting the moon or whatever, this Apollo mission. And the whole thing is that you go in and the Apollo mission player reports random things to ground control. Hey, we hear a sound, here's this. And ground control, have you check the widget, and you can get a sketchbook or a logbook of these different things. And the whole things are these simple, like one-off, here's a question or concern, here's a response. But specifically with Apollo 47, I think the neat part is that it's supposed to be mundane. And then if anything exciting happens, the rule is you change scene immediately. So it's just a kind of a, hey, here's this, ground control, check light 345 is blinking blue. Apollo 47, tap the light, did that fix it? Ground control, light solid blue, we're good to go. And just like that. And these can be a kind of, like I said, a quick way you can interact with friends. There's still that flock call for, again, you're just kind of maintaining a quick, easy contact. But you still have that element of fantasy and that break from reality that we all need from time to time as well.
Yeah. And that definitely seems like a more abstract, a looser, rules light sort of game. The way that you're describing it as if the only rule is nothing interesting happens.
Pretty much.
And, if something interesting happens, then you have to move on to something else. And there are a number of games that are designed to be played via correspondence or, in different sort of unconventional ways. One that came to mind when we started talking about this was Elliot Davis's game, The Time We Have. It's a 2-person game where you're in a zombie apocalypse. Your 2 brothers or 2 siblings going back and forth. One person sits on either side of a closed door and you play the game through the door. by using a deck of cards to generate prompts. And you're going through because one person has been bitten and the other one hasn't. And so the one who has been bitten is slowly succumbing to the zombie virus and slowly becoming a zombie. And, the emotional fallout of having to deal with that.
And that works really well. And one of the reasons why I wanted to do this type of episode now is, again, we just had Leon on and he was here talking about Solo Not Alone. It is something we absolutely support. It's live now. A lot of these games will work really well for this. A lot of them are the journaling type games where you get a prompt and you have to write your thoughts and then you respond to those thoughts. But these can also be done solo or with a group, with each person building off of the story that the next person, wrote down. Another system that we've had on here that we've explored is John from Tale of the Manticore, his pendulum system, where you have that world building. You'd have your yes or no, your good or bad, and then you'd build the next thing, and then you pass it on to the next player. Everyone can read what everyone's doing, but each person builds a next part of this kingdom as their history goes on, or the next piece of the wall, or the next part of the scenario. And you can pass this along a group. This is a really light and fun way where you can kind of get this collaborative effort of world building as well.
Yeah, and there are a number of games that would be very good for that. One that's coming to mind is The Quiet Year by Avery Alder, because it is also a world building map making game, and it is definitely one of those where, if you have 2 or 3 players who are going to be routinely playing this game, you can sit down and you can do 1 or 2 card pulls, and then you just set it down until you have time to come back to it. It's not something that you have to devote a good amount of time to. It's something that can be picked up and put down relatively easily.
Right. And that ease, that portability, and that relative quickness of action does, again, it lets us fit gaming back into our lives when lives can get awfully, awfully hectic. And if you're fortunate enough to actually have time where you can sit with friends, you can absolutely use some of these world building games and these more passive games in between your sessions, so you can develop your world for your characters. And that way, too, they're more invested and their characters are invested when they actually get down to the table, because it's the world you all have built together.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm looking for a game that has come to mind. I saw the review for it, and I can't remember the name of it.
Who knows?
And I don't know that I'm going to be able to find it right now. But the general premise of the game is that it is a game about a magical grimoire, and the book that you are playing in is the magical grimoire.
Ooh.
And as you are playing the game is slowly trying to consume your soul.
Okay.
And it probably will. But when it does, you are supposed to take the book and hand it off to the next person.
Ooh,
and
okay.
they start playing the game again, starting from the beginning, but they have all of your notes and all of the modifications that you've made, because you're supposed to write in the book and do all sorts of things and add things to the book and take things out of the book and all of those sorts of things. And so the book eventually changes, and because of the way that the prompts work, the prompts that you're going to get are going to change the game as you play it every time. And
I love that. That sounds
as
amazing.
As the book progresses, it might end up spitting someone's soul back out. And so then they can pick up the book again and try playing through it again. And as it progresses and as you add more to it and as you add more notes and you modify the book more and more, it becomes easier and easier to actually win the game.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. It has a bit of a Dungeon Crawler Carl vibe to it, too, as you get later into the series. Definitely interesting. That does sound a lot of fun. Another game I think would actually lend itself really well to kind of this collaborative or this passive collaborative type game would be it as well. And again, it's the game that Ian and I have worked on. Ian's done the lion's share of it. But I think while it's very easily solo playable, I think if you had a party, kind of like the Canterbury's Trails going on your pilgrimage, seeing how each person deals with their each individual, because they each have their own faith, their own religion, and their own tenets, and they might not be the same as the party. So something that could be beneficial for one might be treacherous or hazardous, or what's the word I'm looking for? Causing despair to another. And so how those party members decide to act together for the same prompt could actually be an interesting layer to add to the game, I think, as well.
Yeah, I don't know how well it would work mechanically. I don't know how well it would work for a group unless, each person has their own deck of cards that they have to run with.
I would think that they do their character generation first, and then as they're on the trail, reaching their milestones and their relics, those are shared, but they're tenants. So like the first couple card draws and probably the last card draw of the game are shared or are individual, but the middle chunk of the game would be shared.
But the issue that we would have with that would be that as you're going through, because the faith involved in the pilgrimage is a set of cards, and because you as the player have a way to interact with those cards, there would have to be... See, because it would make it more difficult to figure out the interaction with the cards. It's a level of...
It is an extra level of complexity. And yeah, I think you're correct. If each person had their own deck, but each person deals with each card draw. So like you do that, each card draw together with each one, and then you react to your people around you reacting to whatever their card draw is. That might work.
Right. But I don't know. Okay. I don't know that it would mechanically work very well as a multiplayer game.
Okay.
It was designed
as solo.
As solo. Yes. And so there are so many additional layers there.
Right.
Because the orientation of the encounters, how the encounters sit whenever you flip everything over, it determines how you have to interact with it. And so you're going to end up having to figure out how to make that work.
Fair. Yeah, but again, too, I think going with these and just trying to, like I said, figuring out the pacing of the game would work really well, and figuring out, again, what types of games work. Journaling games, as I said before, are kind of amazing for this, because you can just leave a note, even if it's like a roommate or a spouse or whatever, and you're just leaving your note turns just pasted to the refrigerator as you're heading out to work if your schedules don't align or something like this. And again, it's just that way of kind of squeezing that game time in where you can. And your moves and turns don't have to be complex. They don't necessarily have to be on a map or a board. It can be very much theater of the mind.
Yeah. And now, with regards to the types of games that will lend themselves well to this, I've already brought up, rules-light games are going to be good for this. Narrative-driven games are going to be good for this. Story-driven games. So things where the more abstract the rules are, the more likely it is to work for this method of play. And there are a large number of one-page RPGs. I mean, there's a whole subgenre of indie RPGs that are just one-page RPGs or pamphlet RPGs. So they're like a trifold pamphlet, or, even business card RPGs where all of the rules fit on a business card. And so those are the sorts of games where it's almost just a premise prompt. There's not even necessarily rules involved. It's just a premise prompt and some guardrails to keep you on task. And then it's knock yourself out.
Yeah. And I think those are good because, again, they do a lot to kind of help us build and create our imagination. They put us largely into a mind frame a lot of us are not used to going to all the time, and kind of helping developing that critical thinking and that imaginative thinking that, again, that day-to-day slog just kind of gets you in that same slump every day. And so something coming out of left field that makes you stop and reconsider the world around you, even if it's a fantasy world that you've built. It does kind of help break that monotony It is the long gray too, which is another good time to do this. Again, we have that bleak end of winter where everything just kind of seems mundane and droll. And so something to kind of break you out of those doldrums can be a huge benefit.
Yes. And now I'm going through, I'm trying to find the name of that stupid game.
It'll be in the show notes.
If I can find it, it'll be in the show notes. Yeah, because there's one that I saw a review of it on TikTok, and I can't remember. I thought it was Many Sided Media, but I was looking through his playlist and I couldn't find it. And then I thought it was My Life is an RPG, his low effort. Yeah, My Life is an RPG, his low effort reviews. Actually, no, I think I just found it.
Oh, yay!
Let's see here. I'm going to turn on closed captioning and mute it so I can scroll through. So, yes, I have found it.
Huzzah!
It is called Spine, Spine. And yeah, the whole premise of the book is that it is trying to eat you. And whenever it succeeds in eating your soul, you're supposed to pass it off to the next person. And so
I might have to find this game.
And so like the idea that he had with regards to playing this game is having someone pick up a copy of this for your game group. And they play it, and then they pass it off to the next person in the game group. And it works its way around the game group until it comes to a conclusion.
Do you pass it off with a limit configuration? You mustn't play with the box.
Yeah. And yeah, that review was 3 weeks ago, so that's why it was on the brain.
Gotcha.
And I'll leave a link to that particular, probably to the YouTube short version of it, because of the most recent TikTok policy updates and the fact that they're basically owned by the State Department now, and they're using it for surveillance, and we're not okay with that.
Yeah, there's that.
But
again, gaming to get away from the juries and terribleness of the world, right?
Indeed. Now, as I was looking through stuff and, just looking through games in my library, came across one that, I've mentioned it several times before. It's a game that I love, Anamnesis by Sam Lee. Anamnesis would be an interesting one to try and play in this sort of way, where basically each person is playing their own story.
Okay.
But you leave it each time you complete a prompt, one of the other people in the group adds a detail to your story, because the whole premise of the story is that you wake up, you don't know where you are, you don't know who you are, you don't know how you got there.
Okay.
And so each time you complete a prompt for your story, this would be something that, each person, let's just say that there is, let's just say that you have a messenger thread for this, or a, a group email chain or something like that. Something where everybody can see the details that are being posted. And you have one person who's the player, and they are going to generate the prompts. And whenever you generate the prompt, each other person in the group gives one detail of the scene, like just one minor detail of the scene that the player has to incorporate into their response to that prompt.
I like that. Yeah, that does make a good collaborative building effort. And no, that sounds a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you can do that either you take turns on who's playing this particular game, like each person plays all the way through, or, they play through one set of prompts, because there are 4 suits that you go through. And so perhaps you have 4 people in this group, and then one person starts as the first suit, and then they pass the whole character along to the second person, and then for the second suit, and then the third person for the third suit, and the fourth person for the fourth suit. Or you can have it where maybe you have 4 separate group chats going at once, each person playing a different character in a different story that may or may not be connected to one another. There's a bunch of different ways that you could do something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of my goal and my point of this episode, is trying to bring up a non-traditional way to consider playing our games. And when I say R, I mean a global R, the games that you play. Again, even within the RPG space, everything's D&D themed or everything is tabletop map themed, like things Kids on Bikes or Old Gods, while they're all great games and wonderful systems, they still have that sitting at a table, devoting several hours of time, and the format is largely the same. So taking some time and bringing to light some different formats to kind of shift things up a little bit. And again, maybe add a little bit of variety.
Yeah, and there are other games that historically have worked in the ways that we are talking about. Diplomacy. Diplomacy is a big one that it's not really got a whole lot of in the line of rules, but each player is in charge of a state and you're dealing with diplomatic relations with all of the other players, and you each have your ulterior motives and your goals, and you're trying to get what you want, and you have a window to send in your moves to the game master. And if you don't send in your moves, then you don't get to do anything on that turn. And so that is a game that is, specifically designed for this sort of periodic play.
Yeah, I like it. I think that'd be one I'd be really interested to. Even with my video games, I like that espionage/spy/diplomacy aspect of sim games. I always found that fairly interesting. So that would be a lot of fun to play.
Yeah, Matt Colville did a video on diplomacy like forever ago. I'm talking like 2014, 2015, somewhere way back then.
Way in the misty dawn.
Yeah, and if I remember, I will track that one down and put it in the show notes too.
Excellent. Well, yeah, that's what I had to bring to the table for us today. And again, just a consideration of different play types and modalities, taking a step back and considering options. I think it's good to do that on occasion.
Yeah. And just to sort of summarize the points that I was trying to make, the less concrete the rules, the better it is suited for this type of play.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great way to practice those soft role-playing skills. The ones that are not tied to a die roll or that are not tied to a mechanic. There are going to be some games like any of the Richardson Alone games where you have to have a Jenga tower. Those might not be the best games for this.
No,
but
probably not.
But they could be. They could be if you are taking turns and you leave a marker as to whose turn it is next. And then they just show up and do their turn and make their moves with the Jenga tower, whenever they get around to it. And it could be something that you do, you get everybody together and you just knock out the whole game all at one time with you all just sort of standing around this Jenga tower. Or it could be dragged out over 3 days as people get to it when they get to it.
I like this as a roommate scenario, exactly as you're leaving for work or you're coming in, you're wrapping up your day, you make your move, you move your Jenga piece, you set it on the tower, and then you have that long time of, hey, I made my move, but is the game over or not yet? Has the tower fallen? And especially leaving a Jenga tower later in the game, just standing under its own pressure and weight over the course of, possibly a work day or a work shift. That does bring an element of randomness to it as well. That, you and your partner could have played everything, quote, quote, perfect. And sometimes, a gust of wind hits things sideways, and that's the conclusion. That, I think, would be an exciting type of randomness to the game because, me personally, I'd be sitting there and I'd be all day like, oh, is it still up? I wonder what they did. I wonder how that's going to go. And I would be thinking and planning and plotting for a good chunk of whenever I was gone of what I want to do next.
Yeah. And going back to the work of Sam Lee, her game Outliers, where you're a lab assistant and it's played as a Wretched and Alone game. It's played with the Jenga tower, and the Jenga tower represents your funding.
Oh,
and I think that would work very well as a 2-person game where you are both lab assistants in this lab and you're doing the things like one of you is day shift, one of you is night shift.
Yeah.
And because in the perilous world of scientific research, you could get funding pulled without any warning.
Yeah. Nope, it's gone.
And so that would work really well if, you do your thing at night before you go to bed, and then you wake up the next morning and you find that the tower has been spilled all across the floor.
Yes, you spent 5 years researching this dissertation. Someone just published last month. Congratulations, you have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brutal. I love it. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
I think that one in particular could be adapted to play that way and work pretty well.
What was the Battle Mech one with the wrecked mech?
Oh, yes. Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage.
Yeah, that would be a good one too, because again,
there is a two-person play mode for that game as well.
Yeah.
And when you do a two-person play mode, you have one person who is the pilot in the wrecked mech and one person who is the rescue pilot. And having that be sort of a play-by-post, like a call and answer sort of play style, that would work really well because, depending on where your setting is going to be, there is a delay in those radio communications.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so you're sending out the message, hoping that it lands where it's supposed to, hoping that they hear it, and hoping that they are able to respond and that you will actually pick up their response.
Yeah.
And so, I forget, is it for the Apollo missions, is it an 8-minute delay?
To the moon? I think that's correct. I know Mars is, it's 8 minutes to the moon, and I think it's an hour or two to Mars.
Yeah, I think it's longer than that. I think it's closer to 3 hours.
It might be. I know Voyager 1 is now one light day away from Earth. So as far as Voyager 1, and it's been flying for 40 plus years, it takes a day for a one-way message to get there. 3 to 8 minutes sounds about correct for the moon. I mean, I could look that up distance-wise. Let me see here.
Yeah, but anyway, if you had a messaging system set up to where all of the messages were set up with a delay timer. I don't know if there are any messaging services that just automatically have that, where you can schedule messages, but have the message scheduled for 8 minutes after you hit send. So you hit send and then there's an 8-minute delay before it actually goes to the other person to replicate that, to put in an artificial delay to make sure that there is actually a delay between the two.
Yeah. For the moon, it is 1.3 seconds, and for Mars, it's between 3 minutes and 22 minutes, depending on orbits.
Okay.
Yeah.
So much shorter than I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah. Again, that delay, I think that's our big Mars landers, and that was always the big, we don't know when we touch down. We hope we got it right.
Yeah.
If we go poof, we'll know in about 8 minutes.
Right.
Oops. But even still, I mean, dealing with something like lunar landing, that 1 second delay, I mean, if you've ever done any kind of FPS or played WoW, 1 second lag can really wreck your session.
It absolutely can.
I hit bubble.
Yeah, too bad your latency is such that, you hit bubble, but you died 0.2 seconds before it registered on the server, and so you died anyway.
Yep. That's what I've got for today. Like I said, I think this playstyle has a lot of opportunity, especially for those of us that are hectic in life. And again, just something to consider that's a little bit different than your average everyday stuff.
Yeah. And, this is a shorter episode, and that's, I think, for the best, because between the weather and everything else, life has been kind of hectic for the both of us for these last 2 weeks. We've had the big snowstorm come through. We had the first one that was supposed to be a big snowstorm and didn't really do a whole lot. And then almost exactly a week later, the second one came through and dumped 6 inches of snow. And so for this part of the country, 6 inches of snow shuts down everything.
Crippling, yeah. So I've been my work has been closed for the past week. Now, the town I work in, they got 12 and 13 inches in some places. And again, that's enough to just shut basically everything down.
Right, because we're not from New England or the upper Midwest, where this is just a normal snowfall, and they have all of the equipment to remove all of that. We live in a place where the city or the county might have half a dozen snowplows for the whole county.
We've got one snowplow. The whole state shares it.
Right. And so, and then on top of that, my she came down with the flu on Monday. And so she's been homesick that whole time and, trying to deal with that. And it's been one headache after another. And so a nice, short, easy, low prep episode was what was in the cards for us today.
Absolutely.
So thank you everyone for listening. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas, send us an email undercommontaste@gmail.com or come join us on our Discord. You can find a link to our Discord along with our other social media accounts through our website, undercommontaste.com. You can also find links there to our Patreon, patreon.com/undercommontaste, and our itch store, undercommontaste.itch.io.
If this is your first time listening, we're very happy you found us. You can find our other episodes where we talk about world building, lore dumps. Right now, we're getting ready to wrap up our Dragon Walk, which has kind of been a large arc over the past couple months. But anyway, you can search us under Common Taste on your podcatcher choice, and you can pull up our library of episodes and join us for any of those.
Yeah. And we are going to be, like James says, wrapping up the rest of the dragons from the good aligned outer planes in our next episode. So stay safe, everyone, and we will see you again with dragons in 2 weeks.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Under Common Taste. Our theme song is Massacre Anne, written and performed by Mary Kroll and used with permission. You can find Mary online at marykroll.bandcamp.com or on Patreon at patreon.com/Dr. Mary C. Kroll. Our logo is by David Sutherland. You can find more of David's work on deviantart.com/David Sutherland or on instagram.com/Willex_73. We'll be back in 2 weeks, so stay safe and we'll see you then.